Late summer weather continues across the eastern part of the United States, and we've got a couple of more days to go before changes occur that will bring some rain later Friday into Saturday and autumn. An autumn chill, I think it's fair to say, for Sunday and for probably all of next week. We will discuss all of this and also talk about Tropical Storm Philippe, which is moving away from the British Virgin Islands and making its way northwestward. It's complicated. Well, we'll uncomplicate it tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. Mulch, topsoil, and sand. And of course, when it comes to storm preparation, get over to Omni to get what you need. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number, and they have the best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by Weatherflow, Joe. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you make any purchases on the Tempest website, be it the weather station or anything else that they have available, use the coupon code I want a weather station. And if you do, you will get.
Well, that's the last time I heard you were going to get 10% off, Joe.
And that is correct. Yes, it is. So we are back from a 3-day hiatus, and well deserved. A friend of mine, some friends of mine came over today, Joe, and because I had my shed and we needed to build a ramp for the shed because it's about, when your house is on the side of a mountain, you have to put it on blocks. So it's about a foot or about a little over a foot off the ground. So he built me a nice ramp. So we spent the afternoon doing that. And I had a very nice weekend. So I hope you had a very nice weekend too.
It turned out to be a decent weekend. And as I was explaining to other people, saying that I'm not in my usual place, my office. As it turned out, today we had some folks over to do the repaving of the driveway and to get rid of the trench that was put in place against the side of my house on the remediation that was done in July. And the guys did great work. But after they were done, we congratulated them, thanked them very much. Then after a short little break, Renata and I went downstairs. We first got the television room, which is the room immediately adjacent to my office, in place and in proper order, proper working order. We go into my office and I'm saying to myself, good, with any luck, I'll be in here in time for Joe and Joe tonight. And what happened? As soon as we started, the power went out. And
Well,
we found ourselves,
the best laid plans of mice and men, Mr. Rayo, which was on Turner Classic Movies this afternoon. But I didn't have a shadow of a doubt that you would solve this problem, and that movie's on at 8 o'clock.
well, we're just going to put this aside, and tomorrow is another day. And hopefully tomorrow night, you will be seeing me back in the old office stead instead of being out here. And this is actually our living room. And we've been moving the position of the laptop around, but in any case, so long as you can see and hear me, everything is well tonight.
Good. Welcome to everybody on the chat board to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show. And for those of you lurking in the background, I imagine the folks at the usual suspects like the Upton Weather Service office and the Mount Holly boys and girls and the folks at WPC and SPC are just taking a bit of a break from lurking in the background since there isn't a whole lot of weather going on. But we appreciate those of you who do lurk, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on your notifications by hitting that little bell, that notification bell, and you won't miss the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is on uh, in theory, it's on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 p.m. and we're off Fridays and Saturdays. I think we're pretty much back on a normal schedule this week, which means Friday and Saturday we're off. You're enjoying some late summer weather, Mr. Rayo, as you're warmer than me. I mean, it was warm here. I think we got to I got to 77 or 78 after a low of 49 this morning. Um, but I saw most of the highs were in the low to mid 80s, which was, you know, that's pretty far above normal.
81 was the highest I saw, but that was only about 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in Putnam Valley, and I'm sure it must have gone up a few degrees higher than that. It certainly was very warm. It was a great day, by the way, to do paving. Was so thankful for that. And you're absolutely right, Joe. We're looking at a big change to much cooler weather. Nature's having its way with us, lulling us into the false sense of security that, this is, balmy. It's going to stick around for a while. It won't. I mean, once we get into the weekend, there are going to be significant changes. By the way, I think it was in 2018 on this day, temperatures throughout the area and throughout the tri-state area were in the lower and middle 90s, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But so as warm as it was out there today, we weren't anywhere near the records that we set, 4 or 5 years ago with those temps in the 90s.
Yeah. I imagine the rain didn't hurt the cause. I mean, I'm sorry, didn't help the cause because with the ground being pretty well saturated, it kind of cools the bottom part of the atmosphere just a little bit. But well, this is kind of the way the month of September started, and then when it was all finished, the month turned out to be right around normal for not just New York City, but for Philadelphia, for Washington D.C. Few spots were even a couple of tenths below average. So October's kind of starting the same way on the very warm side, and it's all up and down the East Coast. It's dry. There's hardly any weather going on, and it's certainly good payback for after the big rains of last week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The ground is still much too soft in many places to do any mowing, but yeah, the leaves are coming down, but they're not coming down very prettily, Joe. They're mostly, at least on my property, it's mostly just brown, and I think it's because they just had too much water over the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, our leaves are coming down here in a big. They actually started coming down at the beginning of September, and they're changing color in a big way now, and in a nice way. Bobby Whitaker, Joe, is the first to hit Super Chat tonight. Thank you, Bobby Whitaker, and he says he's just paying his lurking tax, which which I thought was clever. Thank you, and he's got the number one that comes up on the screen. And also the chairman I saw also hit super chat. I lost his message. Here we go.
Hey,
I
he said,
admit I'm a
I'm a,
lurker. He says thanks for the great weather in Wildwood. So it did work out in South Jersey for the chairman and Mother Briller, and we're very happy to hear that. So shall we look at the high temperatures today?
shall we?
Surely, and why not?
Surely.
Thanks. It's
Yeah.
good. You caught my cue there.
And
I
Mrs. Rayo points out our high here in Putnam Valley was 82. So yes, it was warmer than the 81 I quoted, 82 degrees. And I strongly suspect, Joe, that tomorrow we'll probably be matching that.
Yeah, normally if this were a case where we have a west wind tomorrow, you probably would go a few degrees higher, but the wind's actually going to be southeast just about everywhere. So what you gain by not getting rid of the heat that you collected today and having some of it around tomorrow, you're going to lose a little bit of it because the water temperatures are in the 60s again. So, but bottom line is you're right. It's going to pretty much mirror today's, and we've got most highs were in the low and even a few middle 80s. Newark got to 84 as one of the hot spots. And there's an 85 between Newark and Trenton. I don't know what station that is. Trenton 81 for a high. Philadelphia 84. Lancaster got to 82. There's an 86 near Harrisburg and another one west of Allentown. So those are some of the higher numbers. South coastal Connecticut was mostly around or just over 80. Right along the immediate coast, like Bridgeport, only got to 76. And Long Island highs were mostly in the East End were in the mid 70s, probably upper 70s to around 80 just about everywhere else. Kennedy only got to 75. West Babylon to 79. I'm going to check. I grabbed the high temperatures for a couple of different locations so we could take a look too. So we'll go to upstate New York and up into central and parts of northern New England, Joe. It was a very warm day there. Most highs were in the upper 70s and low 80s. Albany, one of the hotter spots, with an 84. I think the airport got to 82. Pittsfield, Mass at 79. Worcester, as we like to call it, 79 for a high. Boston, 83. Concord, 86. So a hot spot there. And Portsmouth, New Hampshire got to 83. Dover, New Hampshire, I think that's Dover, New Hampshire, 88. And into southern Maine, temperatures also making it up into the 80s. And the other spot we should check is to the south. So why don't we do that? And taking a look, Washington, D.C., Baltimore. Washington got to 86. Baltimore, 85. Right on Chesapeake Bay, whatever station that is, east of Baltimore, 79. Annapolis, 77. There's a place called California, Maryland, believe it or not, and they got to 80. They got to 80. It's on the bay, and
No, no weirder than Pittsburgh, Kansas.
right. So actually, the warmest temperatures were kind of centered over New Jersey and parts of eastern Pennsylvania. It wasn't like it was 90s down in Virginia and North Carolina. It was pretty much temperatures were actually a little bit lower as you wound up pushing your way to the south. But you're right. There's a repeat performance tomorrow, and then Thursday with more of a southeast wind, and probably I think maybe some more in the way of clouds to deal with, because with this, the flow is going to be somewhat onshore-ish, and this time of year when you get that, the dew points are coming up. You get a south, any kind of a flow off the ocean, the rising dew points, and the long, and they're getting longer. The October nights will lead to probably some patchy fog that will develop during nighttime and early morning hours in some places. It happened this morning. Most of that was in Pennsylvania, but I'm thinking that, particularly Thursday morning and Friday morning, there's probably going to be more of that.
Yeah, and that's typical, really, at this time of the year, October especially. You get these nights where radiation fog forms, and in the wee hours of the morning, you get patchy areas, and in some cases, the fog can be rather thick and dense, especially in the valleys. But it burns off quickly as soon as the sun comes up.
Yep. And on the satellite, at least from the late afternoon through this evening on the loop, I mean, you really have to go back to Nebraska, Kansas, and into eastern South Dakota, where there seems to be a blowup of thunderstorms there. There's hardly anything really in the east of the Mississippi. We've got a few storms bubbling up in southeast Texas, and there's action up in the northwestern part of the country as energy comes in there and bringing in some rain in from off the Pacific. So we'll take a look at the latest radar and see what's happening here. It will. Oh, that is the latest radar. No, that's from this morning. Let's freshen this up and take a look. And we actually do have a very active line of severe weather, Mr. Rayo, moving through north central Kansas, the eastern half of Nebraska, and eastern South Dakota. We've got about half a dozen severe thunderstorm warnings. And this is part of the next cold front that's going to be approaching the East Coast. And I don't think we're going to get certainly not going to get a repeat performance of what we saw with the rain on Friday. I was kind of thinking along the lines of, if you go from say central New Jersey northward, maybe a half to 3/4 of an inch could fall between Friday, for whatever falls Friday night and whatever falls on Saturday, and less as you go south of there.
Sal Blandino is going to be very, very
Oh,
disappointed.
poor dear Sal.
Cal sent me a message saying, I do hope that your um, thoughts on October the 6th.
Oh,
And
he's fixated on October the 6th. Joe, pick another date. Make it up. Make it up.
well,
It never rains on February. It never rains on February 30th.
not in my memory.
Right, exactly.
Huh.
Well, if you
But
if you remember a February 30th, then you maybe need some meds.
is October 6th? It's October 6th is this Friday? Is that?
Yeah, today is the 3rd. So yes, 4th, 5th. No, tomorrow's the 4th. Yeah, Friday's the 5th, Thursday's the 5th, and Friday's the 6th. Yes. So
Because we do have scattered showers in the forecast for Friday, unfortunately, Sal.
yes, we do, Sal. Poor Sal. He wrote a message earlier on somewhere. I don't know if it was on a YouTube video or whatever, and he just said, asking me, hopefully that the rain will fall Friday night and then be out of here so that we could have improving weather conditions on Saturday. And I just wanted to write a one-word, two-letter answer. No.
Well, why is he so? I mean,
He
it
doesn't.
might just be that we might get a shower or two on Friday. It's Saturday that's really going to be the wet day.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So why is he so concerned about Saturday if he wants Friday?
I don't know. He's got some, he's got
He wants
I
everything.
don't know what the problem is. Some scattered showers up in Montana and Idaho and Wyoming. The west right now is dry, but there's precip that's off the coast. We'll see how that comes in. The Storm Prediction Center, Joe. The Storm Prediction Center, as the map is deciding to refresh itself now, has, well, we've got actually one. All right, let's see if I can count these. One, two, three, four working severe thunderstorm watches in that area from eastern South Dakota all the way down into a small portion of northwestern Oklahoma. So it's a fairly extensive area from north to south. And actually, there's another severe thunderstorm watch on the bottom of that in southwest Texas. So the radars are, definitely busy. And of course, the Storm Prediction Center also has um, in terms of the risk, the risk is enhanced in central Kansas and a small portion of south central Nebraska, and that comes with a 5% tornado risk in that enhanced zone. And you can see the slight risk goes from southwest Texas all the way up into southeastern South Dakota and teeny tiny portions of northwestern Iowa and southwestern Minnesota. Now, tomorrow, as we see this front push a little bit further to the east, the risk is concentrated mostly in west and central Texas and on up into southwestern, well, the southern part of Oklahoma anyway. We have a slight to marginal risk and a 2% tornado risk there. Day 3, which brings us now to Thursday into Friday, has no severe weather risk and just a narrow area of general thunderstorms being indicated. So that's good. And on your 7-day rainfall from WPC, uh, half an inch to half an inches in central Jersey. Big rains indicated in upstate New York and into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And by the way, um, Joe, we should mention that while it may not come up as a tropical system per se, because it's kind of complicated and we'll explain it, but um, perhaps the remnants of Philippe with another developing low that'll form over the weekend off the mid-Atlantic coast and down east Maine and western Nova Scotia might be in for some rain and wind from the remnants of Philippe, I think.
Now, we said this a couple of weeks ago that Nova Scotia, in particular, in recent years, has seemingly been the magnet for tropical cyclone activity. That all the storms haven't been, hitting necessarily the Bahamas or Florida or whatever. They seem to be out over the ocean, and then they curve up toward Atlantic Canada. And we just had a storm that affected Nova Scotia a couple of weeks ago, and this may be another sign of another round of wet weather for them with some tropical nature mixed in.
Yeah, Totally agreed. And in fact, let's just bring up what's going on over there. So this is the latest advisory from Tropical Storm Philippe, and they may be down to they canceled the severe. Let me see what they did here because I really didn't give this a close look. All right, so they still have they have Tropical Storm. I don't even know what they have. Hang on a second. The colors don't match up with what they have on the scale. So let's see what they did. Okay, come on. I'm working two screens here because I'm ambidextrous, and we have
It almost looks like that system that came by, and amazingly, it's also on a weekend. I forgot already the name. What was it? Lee? Was it Lee
no.
that affected?
Wait, I'm sorry. Say get the question again.
The storm that affected eastern Maine
Lee.
and Lee. That was Lee, and that was
Yes.
on a Saturday, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
We even had a phone interview with somebody at this radio station I used to do in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And now look at this. Look at this. And another storm taking basically the same kind of route that Lee did and affecting the same region, eastern Maine and western Nova Scotia, and also hitting on a weekend. Amazing.
Right, and this is not likely to strengthen as it moves northward because the upper air is just not very supportive of that. It might hold together. Plus, there's other things happening with this cold front coming eastward that would argue that this may be, a post-tropical system even before it reaches our own latitude, and by the time it reaches eastern New England or western parts of Nova Scotia, that it'll be post-tropical. We're down back to 6-hour advisories because all tropical storm warnings that were up for Antigua, Barbuda have been discontinued, and the tropical storm watch for the British Virgin Islands has also been discontinued. So now there are no watches or warnings that are in effect at this time, although we may see tropical storm watches go up for Bermuda because this thing may pass relatively close to Bermuda. We shall see. But it's at 19.6 and 64.9, 85 miles north of St. Thomas, or about 875 miles south of Bermuda. Top winds are 45. Northwest is the motion, or 310 degrees at 12 miles an hour. And it really isn't much on it. And let's look on the satellite. I'll bring up the tropical. Where we go? The tropical Atlantic should do it. So we'll bring that one up and take a look. I mean, it's a very sheared looking system. I mean, if you look at this on the loop, Joe, I mean, it's now that we've gone to the infrared, it makes it even harder to see where the center is. So I'm going to just add a few frames here. Maybe we could figure out where the center of circulation is. But you see a lot of clouds and rain. It's mostly south of where the center. I could kind of pick it up a little bit now on the loop. There's hardly any convection around the circulation, which seems to be detached from the main area of thunderstorms, which is further south. So there's probably going to continue to be big rains over parts of Puerto Rico and over the Virgin Islands and the northern Leeward Islands, but the center is like detached from all of this. So this is not going to develop. I don't really think this is going to really do very much in terms of structure and strength as it moves northwestward over the next few days.
Certainly nothing like in terms of a threat, if it does indeed get to eastern Maine or Nova Scotia, nothing like what Lee brought to them a couple of weeks ago. But still, squally or showery rains and gusty winds seem to be in the picture for them as we move into the start of the upcoming weekend.
So we need a pattern change to get rid of the heat that we have, because I know some people aren't happy about that, but it's coming, and I think it's coming in a fairly impressive way from what I'm seeing on the upper air. And you'll notice that we are in a ridge position this first part of this week. There's a deep trough that's moving across the Rockies and Plains that's pushing eastward, and then some energy is coming down from the northwestern part of Canada toward Lake Winnipeg, and that carves out a very deep trough in the eastern part of the United States. And of course, at the same time, you've got lower than normal pressures off the southeast coast with an upper low east of Florida, and then somewhere in that mess is Philippe, which is going to be moving northwestward. And I think what's going to probably happen is that you're going to have a non-tropical system that's going to develop offshore that's going to pretty much absorb it. And the deep trough in the east, I mean, this is pretty strong and impressive to see a trough like this in early October. You're going to have an upper low that's going to drop down into upstate New York and into Pennsylvania. It's one, two, three, almost four. It's four contours closed. The westerlies go all the way down into Florida, so this cool air is going to make it pretty far to the south. And while it doesn't pull out, it actually, because you got a little bit of blockiness going on over Greenland, and there's a storm sitting northwest of the Azores that's not going anywhere. So this upper low is just going to kind of rotate around in eastern Canada for a while. It's probably not going to pull out until maybe later next week, and then it's going to get replaced by another vigorous system moving out of the plains. And off the East Coast, Joe, there's a several contour cutoff off the New Jersey coast the weekend of the 14th and 15th, interestingly enough. And that goes away, and then another deep trough drops down into the eastern two-thirds of the United States for the latter part of the forecast period. So this is it's kind of interesting to see this pattern shaping up moving forward, because it's sort of has a bit of a different look than what we saw last year and the year before.
Yeah, this is a pattern that I'm sure not too many people are pleased with. That the weekends are all of a sudden being impacted. Each weekend is something else that comes along, brings clouds and wind and showery weather, and we didn't exactly have a great weekend. We did have some precipitation over the weekend, lingering from the downpours that we had here on Friday into Saturday. We had to wait until Sunday to get into some drier air. Now we have this system and it kind of reminds me, Joe, of what happened in '91 at the end of October of 1991. The so-called perfect storm, the no-name storm, because there was a very vigorous upper-level system that came diving down through the Great Lakes into the Northeast. We also had Category 1 Hurricane Grace, and that upper-level system literally swallowed up Grace, made it even a stronger system, and that, of course, led to that legendary offshore storm that they made a movie out of. And now you also mentioned that after this weekend, we have maybe for the following weekend, another strong upper system, which may bring yet another chance for not too nice a weather pattern for another weekend. I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden we see the weekends are getting impacted by these systems.
Oh yeah, and the pattern does look pretty active for the next 2 weeks. It also it's going to be colder. Overall, it's going to be colder than normal in terms of temperatures, and you're not going to get much of the way of big warm-ups in between. So you can wave goodbye to the 80s after tomorrow, I think.
Right. And I don't know whether or not we're ever going to approach those levels again for the remainder of the fall season. So this may be it. Enjoy tomorrow. It won't be quite as warm on Thursday, but enjoy that, because then some big changes are coming, as we just noted, for Friday and the weekend.
Now, on the lower right, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because I want everybody to be able to see this. If you look on the lower right, there is a closed surface low that's at about 32.5 and 69.1. All right, that is not the tropical storm. Okay, that's not Philippe. To the southeast of that, I'll have to roll back a few frames. You see this 10,004 low at 25 and 64.5. That is Philippe. So what happens is, this coastal low develops, and here comes your cold front now for Friday night and Saturday with the rain, and suddenly you also have a 990-ish low southeast of Cape Cod Saturday afternoon. the tropical system part of it is just it really is not that important at this point. It is just going to be, you're going to have a strong low that is going to move up the coast and deepen a little bit. It gets down to a 984 low, Joe, that comes in on the GFS anyway, about halfway along the main coast. So somewhere between Portland and Eastport on this run. The European had it coming over western Nova Scotia and not too far from Eastport, Maine. The two models seem to be further left. So, and even some of the hurricane tracking model guidance was showing the low going in that direction. So it does seem that they're going to get some rain and wind here out of this. And of course, it combines with that front as it moves eastward, and you get a low that 974-ish low, 984-ish low, not too far from Montreal, that kind of backs southwestward. But you've got all this cool air. There's that 540 thickness that gets down to southern New Jersey and northern West Virginia, although it reflects more of what's the colder air aloft than the low levels. And yes, that is blue that you see in parts of upstate New York, some lightish blue. So who knows? There might be some first snows in some of the elevated areas of the Adirondacks on Sunday with this. Um, Actually, even gets down almost, but not quite, to just north of Binghamton. So
Let's not forget. Let's not forget that this weekend is a holiday weekend. It is Columbus Day weekend. And traditionally, a lot of people do head up to upstate New York, into New England to do some leaf peeping. And,
they're going to be wet on Saturday. And even on Sunday, depending on where you go in upstate New York, there's going to be a lot of instability clouds and cold rain showers and a gusty wind. That's the other thing. I mean, the gradient does get fairly tight, so it's going to get windy here from the northwest come Saturday night into Sunday. And that cool air, as I said, goes all the way down to me in North Georgia and actually even beyond me. And as we move ahead into next week, it doesn't look like we'll get too much action. There's a weak system with a secondary front come Tuesday night into early Wednesday. And then here comes that energy that I talked about for the weekend of the 14th and 15th, where it's got some sort of diving system from the plains that moves southeast and makes some sort of a coastal low there come next weekend offshore. I mean, I know it's far enough down the road, but I think the idea of an active pattern like this makes a whole lot of sense considering what's going on in the upper atmosphere.
yeah, you just can't expect it to remain, balmy, calm, and in the 80s for too many days in the month of October. Something has to give, and it looks like it will be giving by the time we get to this upcoming weekend.
Let's figure. Let me pull up the temperature anomalies here so we could take a look.
In fact, I was telling the guy who was doing my paving this today. I said, well, because some of the guys toward the end of the day, they were actually sweating a bit because it was again in the lower 80s. Thank goodness there was not much in the way of humidity. But I said, well, if you want some cool weather, you just wait until Monday. Monday is going to be hard pressed to make it much above 60 here, and with the way the winds will be blowing, it's going to feel even chillier than that.
Yeah. Just looking at the anomalies. So starting on, actually, the GFS has below normal temperatures coming in fairly quickly Saturday afternoon after the front goes by, and it's got it, mostly below average in east of the Mississippi for Sunday, Monday, still holding on from the Great Lakes to the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast as we move into Tuesday. Then it just sort of relaxes a little bit, but still below normal on Wednesday in the Northeast, below normal on Thursday of next week. And then we wait for this next system to come down next weekend, and that sets us up for whatever we get. And here comes another big area of below normal temperatures around mid-month that comes down out of Canada and goes all the way down into Texas and the Gulf Coast and eventually swings its way into the eastern part of the United States. So, whatever departures from normal we accumulate these first days of October, I think are going to wind up getting wiped away fairly quickly once we get into this below normal temperature scheme.
And that surge of colder air, especially in the central part of the nation, that's what they call a blue norther in Texas. I mean, when the cold air plunges almost straight south from central Canada. So they're going to be seeing their fair share of big changes temperature-wise in the coming days and weeks ahead.
That they are. And I'm just trying to get my mouse to work. Why is it that it's not doing what it's supposed to? Okay, there it is. It's moving it too quickly. The chairman, Scott Briller, did a second super chat hit, and I want to acknowledge that. Minneapolis on October 1st set their all-time October temperature record of 92. Apparently, I didn't realize this, Joe. They got to 92 on October 1st, and they probably have snow in the forecast at some point for next week, but we'll see. All right, so I'm guessing that you are. Can you do? You have. I know you're holding a Briller Jeopardy in hand. I have one in case you can't get to it.
You better do yours tonight, and hopefully, if I'm back tomorrow night, I will have the ability to read off Briller Jeopardy. Because right now, I'm looking at YouTube on Safari, and I'm looking at you on Zoom using Chrome. So,
Okay.
for whatever reason, I can't. I can use Chrome more than once on my other computer, but I cannot do it here on the laptop.
All right, so Briller Jeopardy time, folks. So what is the highest temperature ever recorded in New York City Central Park for the month of October? The highest temperature ever recorded for New York City Central Park in the month of October. Chatboard folks can play along with this, of course. Tyler Fienga says 91. Alan Rupa says 92. Frank R says 93. Christina Pedia says 92. Bobby Livingston 93. Joe Z says 94. What does Joe Rayo say?
I think I mentioned at the top of the show that was it in 2018? I think it was in 2018 that the temperature reached. Now, what did it reach? 93? I think it was 93.
93. Well, guess what? Joe Z and John Melander said 94, and there's a whole bunch of folks that said 93. The correct answer, Joe, is 94, and it was on October 5th, 1941.
Really?
Yes. So it didn't quite get to the all-time high. What's the lowest temperature?
In October?
In October. The lowest temperature.
So the question here now is, did we ever fall below freezing in the month of October at Central Park? And I will say yes, and I'll say 31, and I'll even mention the year. I think it was 2011, and I will also say it was October 29th, 2011, 31 degrees.
All right. Well, Tyler Fienga says 37. Craig Carlberg says 39. Christina Pedia says 31. Kenneth Rosenberg says 23. Joe Z says 25. Frank Scalera says 36. Northern Grace says 38. And Matthew Howe says 28. And let's see. Hold on. Chuck Cardillo at 29. Matthew Howe said 28. You know what, Joe? Matthew's the winner at 28. And that was on October 30th, 1925.
Wow.
1925. What's the coldest maximum? The coldest high temperature ever recorded in the month of October?
I'll say 47.
You'll say 47. Okay. The coldest high. I'm going to write coldest high on the chat board, so this way everybody can post
coldest
it.
Max.
Right, coldest max.
Or min-max.
Max. All right, so Michael Lazara says 43. William Uber says 42. Keith James says second says 52. John Melander 46. James Davison 43. Christina Pedia 45. Keith James the second now says repeats 52. Thank you. Northern Grace 44. Latex Dreams 42. William Uber 42. Matthew Howe at 38. And again, boy, Matthew, if you're not cheating, okay, which I hope you're not, you've got two in a row on the nose here. 38, Joe. Do you know what the date was?
38. Wow.
38.
1979. October 16th. I don't
No,
know.
October 30th. Now, oddly enough, the low was on October 27th, 1936. So I guess the setup which was 28. So you would think that that would have been one of the days where it had a chance to beat the max. I mean, to get to that low high record. But it was 38 in October 30th, 1925. 1925.
Wow.
And the fourth question tonight on this October statistic, Briller Jeopardy. The biggest snowfall for New York City in the month of October. Now, this one you should get, Mr. Rayo.
Well, I know I had 14 inches of snow on October 29th, 2011, up here in Putnam Valley. And I believe Central Park on that same day got something like 2.2 inches.
Well, you got the date right. You got you're not far from the amount. Okay. Frank Scalera says 3 inches. Okay. So he is about as close as you can get to 3 inches without actually being 3 inches. The answer is 2.9
Wow.
is the
I remember,
exact answer to the flake, Joe. It's 2.9. And that was on October 29th, 2011.
as I said, up here in Putnam Valley, 14 inches of the heaviest wet snow that you can imagine. And in fact, we had something like $2,000 worth of damage on my property. The amazing thing was that we had the remnants of Hurricane Irene that dropped a tremendous amount of rain. The worst we got out of that was, a mudslide on the side of my house, and it really didn't lose power for all that long. But the snow that came a couple of months later, 14 inches, folks, on the 29th of October. And Joe, it felt like, if you stepped outside, that there were hunters out there shooting at turkey or deer, because the branches and tree limbs, when they broke, they sounded like rifle shots, and like this was happening like every few minutes. And we actually, my Renata, we were desperate. We were trying to save our red maple tree, which we did. I think we lost a weeping willow, but we did save the red maple. That was an incredible time. I mean, like after the storm, tree branches and twigs and tree limbs all over my front lawn, and some of them are, and a lot of folks don't realize, Joe, how heavy. I mean, you talk about a tree falling on your house, that will do a bit of damage, but even a big tree limb is pretty damn heavy. For
Oh,
God's
yeah.
sake, almost got a hernia trying to move some of that stuff on my own. Finally had to pay somebody to come along with their truck and, take it, haul it all away. But that was incredible.
Yep.
And that was, again, not even November, late October
No,
2011.
and that winter of 2011, 2012 was a La Nina winter that produced very little snowfall.
That was our biggest snowfall.
That was the biggest snowfall of the whole winter, yeah.
14 inches in October, and we had very little after that.
Yep.
It's incredible.
All right, I think we can wrap it up tonight. So the Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Link is pinned to the top of the chat board. Excuse me, it's also on the descriptor to this video. Use the coupon code I want a weather station, and if you do, I promise you will get
10% off at very least.
Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number. They have the best prices in town. The website is
omnitruevalue.com.
And okay, so we'll be back tomorrow night, folks, at 7:35, the usual showtime.
And let's hope that I'm back in my regular. I mean, it's not too bad up here.
No, it's not.
I could do another show tomorrow night if I wanted to. Even if I was back on tomorrow downstairs, it's nice to be up here.
Yes. And we should thank our super chat hitters.
Well, you have them.
Right, it's Bobby Whitaker and the chairman hit twice.
Yes.
Thank you. And twice as nice. Thank you. All right, so we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Bye-bye.
Bye, Bonds.